Hello, everybody, and welcome to Success at Sixth, our very first parental event for carers as well, for our new students who joined us very recently. We've got, I think, a very exciting lineup for you, because what we're wanting to do today is set the scene, give you a flavour of the expectations and support for some of the challenges that may ensue, but also allow you to fully understand everything that is currently going on at college for your child. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our principal, Paul Wilson.
Welcome everybody. I'm delighted that you've all been able to attend this evening. It's a really important stage for your sons and daughters, but a really exciting stage for them. And I'm going to share a little bit more about what that's going to involve, and my colleagues are going to cover that in more detail as we go through the event tonight. There'll be opportunities for you to jot questions in our chat and question and answer area, and when one of us isn't presenting, we'll try and respond to those, and anything we don't get to through the evening tonight, we'll try and put responses out to people as well through other channels also, or come back to you through other routes. So please jot your questions and things into the chat or the question and answer area, and we'll try and follow those up with you. Your sons and daughters have joined a really established and really successful sixth form college. We're one of the biggest in the country, and certainly one of the most successful providers of post-16 education around. They've made a really good choice, and we're really confident about that. And one of the things that I've been saying to them during their orientation and induction is that actually we take for granted the core educational elements that they've chosen. Their courses and their success on those courses are the things that we see as a norm. So we're not going to say lots about that today. We're going to talk about the process and some of the culture of the college and the ways in which we might hopefully be working with you as their parents and carers as well. But the first thing to say is that you know, they've settled in very, very well to this point. It's been early days, and we've done this event nice and early, just in case there are things that you might want to follow up with after the first few days and weeks. But it's not just about this point in time. And one of the things I'm going to emphasise towards the end of my slides is that we're here for you if you need us. It's a really important transition into being a young adult and preparing for a next and potentially even bigger step into an even bigger organisation, potentially in another city, potentially in a big higher education institution, studying things at an even more challenging level. So one of our biggest jobs is to prepare a transition. But what we don't do is make the mistake of thinking it's about just getting on with that and being independent from the beginning. It's a process, and that's why we start that process in many ways, talking to you about that, because it takes a little bit of time, and we're trying to support them to develop the independence and skills that are going to stand them in good stead in future stages. The slide on your screen here is a summary of the things that we spoke to the students about in terms of how they might be working with us at the college, and the things that determine our culture and the values in the college. And they're not meant to be prescriptive, and they can be interpreted in different ways, but I spent some time talking to them about what they mean to us and what they should mean to them. So I'm going to share a flavour of that with you, perhaps a shorter version than we spent time talking to them about, and by all means have a chat to them about these things at a later stage also. So we're a really large community, and that large community brings with it firstly that great opportunity to prepare for the next bigger stages, that's intermediate size really for those next steps. We're also a specialist community, so because when you're large, you've got the ability to have a large range of choice, and you've also got the ability to provide scope for specialism. So what they'll find very quickly is, even though we're a large organisation, they'll have found, or will be finding, that they're choosing to spend their time in the parts of the college, in the subjects, with people that have chosen the same things. So they're going to find lots of people like them with their ambitions and their interests that want to study the same things as them. So they've got the perfect combination really of the ability to specialise and make that feel quite small in terms of the number of people that want to do the same things as them, and also the range of opportunities. And one of the key phrases I used with them when I spoke to them earlier in the term was, get your heads up, have a good look around. There's a whole lot of opportunity that if you have a good look around, is on their doorstep, waiting for them to take those opportunities and get ready. And that's really important, because one of the things I'll say later is there isn't very long for them to seize those opportunities. It's a relatively short process, and I'll come on to that later. We're a learning organisation. You would take for granted that we promote curiosity. We want them to do more than the basics. We want them to talk about the future, what they might need to do in the future, what the future might look like that's different in the future for them. They need to be reflecting on what they need to do now to prepare for that future, and it requires a little bit of thinking ahead and a little bit of curiosity about what that future might entail. Some of them will have very clear ideas, as you know, about what they want to do in the future and what they want to do with their qualifications. Others, it may be a different story. They may be still exploring that, and we're really well equipped to try and help them explore that. But actually, more than that, we're preparing them to be young professionals. We're getting them ready to be leaders in society in the future, business leaders, corporate leaders, civic leaders. And that may be a few years away, maybe many years away, but actually they've got to really understand the world. And that links a lot to the community they're in. They've got a great opportunity in a big and diverse community to start to understand their interactions in that bigger community and how they might be leaders in that. So we want them to, again, to get their head up, have a look at the leadership opportunities that are there for them, and to take those opportunities and take the development that comes with that. We talk a lot about challenge and commitment, and you would expect that. I'm going to make no apology, and nor will any of the staff or my colleagues in the college make apologies for expecting very, very high levels of commitment, and they can expect us to challenge them. When speaking to the students at the start of term, highlighted to them that actually the challenge is the exciting bit. And there'll be stages here, and my colleagues will talk about this later, there'll be stages when the challenge feels too much. There'll be moments. Challenge isn't an even thing. It'll come in peaks and troughs. There'll be more moments of challenge at one time of year than another. And what they've got to try and remember, and I would urge you, is that's the point of it. Nobody improves, nobody develops without challenge. And what we need them to do in those moments of challenge is smile a little bit about it and remember that's why they came. That's what they're here for, rather than wilt under that challenge. And I think as staff here and as parents and carers, that's probably one of our most important jobs, actually, is to help them have perspective on the bits that get challenging and help them interpret that as the good things of challenge, not the bad things of challenge, and to run away from it, which we don't want them to be doing. So we've got a really important collective responsibility to help young people interpret that and to keep their commitment high, and to manage their emotional state through what can be a really, really challenging journey, but has huge rewards at the end of it. We talked to them a lot about consideration, and that might sound like being considerate and being respectful and all those things, and of course it means that we expect that as a norm, but what we're really saying to them is to consider their impact in the world. You know, it links to this curiosity theme that I mentioned earlier, and their roles as young professionals in the future. We want them to consider their place in the world, what type of person they want to be, what leadership skills they want to develop and use in the world, what difference they want to make in the world. And frankly, if they're thinking like that, they're going to be a respectful person. They're going to do all the things that we would expect in a normal college community and society anyway, but actually hopefully they're thinking about the development elements of that and the things that they might want to do to really push themselves into the future as well. So we want to keep promoting that word of considering, and considering their place, considering what they're doing, why they're doing things, and how they're doing things would be really important to them. So that's the sort of flavour of what this college is all about, really, and hopefully that's given you a sense of that. So moving us on, we're different, of course, to a school, and certainly it's our experience that students have embraced that very, very quickly. They choose us because we're different from a school in so many ways, and that's linked to many of the things I've described about the transition and the preparation for the next stages. And it's inevitable, therefore, that we expect high levels of independence, and we're supporting that development. And it's also a phase when the relationships are changing. And one of your inevitable fears, I'm sure, as a parent carer, and I've been one, and I've been here too, that ultimately that you're letting go, you're beginning to let go, and that's an important thing to be able to do, but you're not letting go entirely, and your relationship will be changing, and your relationship with us will change, and with them, and we're trying to put them now in the hot seat. They've got to own it, as it were. They've got to take responsibility, but they've got to do that in a recognition that you're supporting them. We're here committed to developing them, and they're in a partnership with us, and they've got a different relationship in that partnership where they should be the leader. We won't let them hide from that leadership responsibility, and we'll talk to them about their role in that throughout the process. But generally speaking, when we're celebrating, it will be with them, and they should be sharing that with you, and so we try to share that with you. When there are challenges, we'll be talking to them and trying to get them to draw you into that conversation, and if they're not equipped or ready to do that, then we'll begin to help that process. But that's what we expect, but we expect them to do the first step in that, and we're ready then, as hopefully you are, that if they don't take the first steps in those things, that we'll step in and try to support them out and understand why that's really important to them. So that growing independence comes with a change in relationship, and that can be a risky phase at this point in time. Certainly these early few weeks and months, they're interpreting what that means, and we've got a big job again with you to help them interpret that and to take the best bits of that and not fall into the risks of that. So it's all about managing those freedoms, taking responsibility, and really owning the journey that we're on. I mentioned before, it's a really short year. It's 37 weeks long, our academic year, and we're already into week 2 of that. And there'll be significant phases towards the end of that when they're doing assessments and exams. So the really core phase of it, in terms of making a big difference, is quite short. If I then reflect that 2 years from now, it's been on the radio today, anybody that listens to the radio, talking about all these young people that are heading off to their new places at university this week. 2 years from today, it's highly likely that your sons and daughters are heading off into a new adventure, into a new further study, into perhaps a bigger city, different city, a big institution. They might be going off for a professional career or an apprenticeship where the responsibilities will change, and they might be moving further away from home at times for that, or traveling. So they're getting ready for that. And it's only 2 years away between now and when they'll actually be doing that. It's only a year away from when they probably need to have had a serious think about what they're applying to do and how to go through that process. So it brings me back to that idea that they've got to get their heads up. They've got to be looking quickly at the opportunities and thinking about where those opportunities are for them to build that CV, to take the leadership, to own things, and be ready in a year's time to sell and promote themselves to those other opportunities that are ahead of them. And again, we've got a big joint responsibility in helping them do that quickly, and they'll have a settling in period, and they'll be doing lots of socializing and getting to know each other, and that's a really important part of college life. But we're also really focused on saying to them, don't forget the other stuff has to start now and accelerate quite quickly into that process. So it's different, and our relationship's different. They've got to get going quick. And they can't afford not to take responsibility in that process, and we're ready there to catch them when they don't, and to talk to them about that, as I hope you are as well. And we intend to have a really productive relationship with you, hopefully spending most of that time celebrating with them, but sometimes, because it will be challenging, doing some propping and supporting and helping, and we'll be doing that with you. So it's a really great phase for them. Lots of young people their age thinking like them, with ambitions that are huge like them, and they'll be exploring that and developing it, and that's a great process to enjoy being a part of. One of the things I most love about being a principal of a college like ours is we get to see that firsthand every day, which is fantastic. Inevitably, that comes with lots of commitments on our part to help get it right. And I started by saying we take for granted the core elements of being superb at preparing, teaching and learning, and doing the core basics of getting them a great set of qualifications. But hopefully, from what I've said earlier, you can begin to get a theme that it's about a lot more than that. Most people applying for the most ambitious things in the future will have those things. It's about how you make a difference in terms of the wider things. So we're really committed actually to working on the wider personal development aspects of college life, in addition to those things that you hopefully are taking for granted, and we're certainly committed to delivering. We'll provide a really safe, vibrant environment for them, with all of those opportunities that come with being large and very diverse, and it is a very safe and positive and structured environment as well, and they can play a big part in what that's like. So when we start talking about our student charter, which relates to these commitments, we're actually asking them about that in the next few weeks and months, what that should look like for them. So our charter doesn't stay the same every year. We've got a charter, it's on our website, but the students help us write that, and we're committed to trying to do what they think they need from us, and their part that process as well. There are massive opportunities to support the future planning and the careers and higher education guidance process. And because of our scale, we attract all of the big players on very large numbers. I think at our careers fair, which is unusual for a college to have their own event, but it's even more unusual for over 70 of the biggest higher education institutions to come to us. It's normally the other way around. They expect you to go to them. And we do a bit of that as well, but we're big enough that they come to us, and we do that process in a very structured way. So lots to come in respect to that. From the things I described with those words beginning with C earlier, there are key expectations that we've got of your sons and daughters. We don't overplay these and overstate them, because they're mature and maturing young people, but we're really clear about them being there. The first mistake our students can sometimes make is that they don't attend everything. Freedom comes with gaps in their timetable, and temptation with that, and we're really clear that actually we run a core day when they're not expected to arrive at the college until they have a lesson, and they're not expected to leave the college until they finish their last lesson. In principle, they can do that, but we're watching and supporting with that all of the time, and we're tracking that, and we'll be talking to you about attendance. And one of your key questions undoubtedly will be about how you get to be informed about that and how you get involved in that, so nothing can go astray. And we've got really strong systems in respect to that. But poor attendance is the single biggest factor in poor performance of students. So we work incredibly hard on that, and it's our starter for expectations, really. We expect them to get involved in college life, to positively engage. It's not a passive process. And at GCSE, in school, it can be very prescribed, it can be very spoon-fed at times, and we're different. They're going to have to do quite a lot, and others will talk about that later, but there's a lot of expectation for them to take what we do in lessons and then do something more with it. And that takes quite a lot of commitment. I've put on here 5 hours a week per subject. Others will talk about 15 to 20 hours of additional time every week beyond just the lessons. And the clever ones will arrive in college for their first lesson. They'll have gaps and frees, and they'll use that time in our study centres and our libraries, and they'll do a lot of peer learning and working with other people from their courses, because that's the best way to learning from others and sharing your understanding and challenging and supporting each other is the best way to do it. So we hope they'll embrace it in that way, and all of those things around the college community and being considerate and managing themselves and reflecting on what difference they want to make. There are massive opportunities, and we expect them to take part and join in and to take those opportunities along the way, and they'll be unique to them. There are so many opportunities, they can manage that for themselves, but it's not an option to choose nothing in that, and we expect that often. So I've said a lot about working in partnership, and that, as I've said at the beginning, there's a big risk around their interpretation being that's it for my parents and carers now. I'm not in compulsory schooling. I've chosen this. Their job is done. It isn't. It's a partnership. It's a three-way partnership, and we want to emphasise that today. And I hope by the end of this meeting, if you take nothing away, you'll have information about how you can contact us, how you can work with us, and how we'll be supportive in managing that transitional relationship into their next stages in their adulthood. So that's a big part of what this evening's about, but it doesn't stop this evening. It's a really important thing for them to take on from there. So that's all from me. My colleagues are going to elaborate more on those things and get underneath the detail. So I'm going to hand back to Donna, and I'll busily try and answer some of the questions and some aspects of the chat while Donna's doing that, if there are any. By all means, get in touch with us at other times beyond this meeting, and that's very much welcomed.
And we've already had some questions in the chat. Please feel free to pop as many as you like up in there for our colleagues to answer as I'm talking. So I'm Donna, I'm one of the associate principals. My specific remit is guidance, admissions, and I make basically sure that everybody gets through successfully in the college and has any barrier removed. And this is one of the statements that we make to our students very much when we're visiting year 11 and other secondary schools. And we say that we expect that our students meet challenges with curiosity and commitment, but as part of a considerate community. And that's the particular bit that I'm going to focus on this evening. So what does that actually mean? Well, a secondary school will have a huge amount of opportunity to be an active member of their community, but we're one of the largest colleges in England, so the opportunities are at least tenfold here, which is extremely exciting. And it's really important for you as parents and carers to understand and support your children to take advantage of those opportunities. So, for example, you could lead on performances within the arts. We have a fantastic arts provision that is actually renowned across the country, and large numbers of performances occur almost on a weekly basis. So if you're in any way interested in the arts, even if you're not following it as an A-level subject, you could still make sure that you take part in those performances. And very often in the summer, we have performances on the lawn, and we're always inviting parents to enjoy that with us. But other things that go on in college are a huge array of enrichments, and they're all part of a student's timetable. So every student is expected to do an enrichment at level 3. So if they're following A levels or a level 3 vocational course. And you will have perhaps had conversations about those with your children prior to enrolment, because they were asked to select things that would interest them. And I'm really proud to say that last year our debating enrichment beat Oxford in the National Debating Championships, and we will be hosting that event in this academic year. So we're hoping for success again. Many other enrichments take place, so we have huge amounts of sporting success each year. We're particularly good at cricket. Basketball is hugely well recognised within the student body, as is football, foosball, volleyball, etc., etc. So hugely great opportunities to put your name on the map in terms of sporting achievement. Some of the newer things that we've started to do in the last couple of years, and I know many of our parents used to come to WQE themselves, so you may not have heard of masterclasses. This is when we have a specialist speaker or somebody with a very well-renowned interest to come and speak to our students to give them a better flavour of something that should be of interest to them. So, for example, a lot of our economics students enjoyed speaking to the Governor of the Bank of England in a masterclass a short time ago. The other things that we do are on a Tuesday afternoon, for example, we allow students to lead their own societies. So we say to all of our new students, join a society. We don't have lessons on a Tuesday afternoon in what we call Block 5. And that's because we anticipate that you will all be part of an active society. And if there's not a society that interests you, start your own. That's your opportunity to be a leader. Some of the societies we've got in this academic year are the Medics Society, we've got Tabletop Gaming, we've got the Dentistry Society, we've got the Oxbridge Society. So they are many and varied. Last year we had motocross, and they tried to get me to join in with that one, but I'm not very good in that regard, so I didn't partake, unfortunately, but maybe this year. Our student executive are a very, very important part of the college, and it's another opportunity to be part of the community and to impact change for the better. So our student executive are an elected, democratically elected body of our students that work directly with our governing body and our executive team to make sure that we know exactly what the student body are saying, what they want and what they feel. So, for example, in the last academic year, our student body felt that they wanted to do some sustainability projects. So we've got lots of new things that are going to happen on site to support that project. And one of those was to make sure that our catering providers only use sustainable materials. And that happened very quickly, I'm pleased to say. They also introduced to us water fountains across site and renewed the whole of our provision in that regard. So they have made great impact, and it's an opportunity to learn how to speak to large rooms full of people, to produce reports. They have their own budget. So it's a great opportunity for those people that wish to certainly be the leaders of the future. Our Student Ambassador programme links to people who may have an interest in supporting people with mental health challenges, or people that would like to support parents in having tours around the college. So if you're an ambassador of the college, you will be supporting us in a specific regard. And we talk to students in their mentoring sessions about those areas that they could partake in. We also have specific focus groups with university staff. So most recently, we invited 2 professors from the University of Leicester to talk about all of the challenges that are ongoing in terms of misogyny in society. And we talked about what our students feel about that and explored some really challenging key terms and concepts with those professors. So I'm just going to focus on you for a minute, parents. I've got some questions for you that I'd like to go away and think about. The AI generation is very much here. So what you're grappling with at the moment with your children is the fact that they have fantastic knowledge of the internet and technological devices, and artificial intelligence is very much with us. But they're not really children anymore. They're making that transition into adulthood. So to what extent do you filter their internet provision? What's too much and what's too little? Do you allow them to bring their own device to college? What does AI mean anyway? These are all really important questions that you may not know the answer to. And if you don't, I'd really encourage you to sign up for one of our parent carer online sessions later this term, where we'll be going in depth into how to use artificial intelligence to really support your child and make sure that they're using it for positive things rather than negative things, and making sure that you take advantage of all of the technological developments in college. So for example, at the moment we're developing a visual classroom for students to use. So this is the parent carer role. I promised in the chat that I'd talk to you about the Pro Portal, so the sign on for parents where you can see key information about your child. So very shortly, you'll be receiving an email from us asking you to sign up to Pro Portal, and that will give you access to the termly reports that we will produce for your child. It will tell you about their attendance, and it will give you key contact details of those staff who are pertinent to your child, and that will be available to you 24/7. There's also a 4-weekly parent carer newsletter. Hopefully you've received the first one of those already. And also, as I mentioned before, there'll be lots of online events for you to take part in. We also use social media a huge amount, and we're about to release a new website for you to follow us as well. So please make sure that you don't feel apart and not fully engaged with our community, because you're a very important part of our community as well. And I certainly look forward to working with you throughout this academic year. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Rakesh Naik, who is one of our 3 heads of studies, who will explain to you a little bit more about the mindset that we anticipate your child should have. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you very much, Donna. Hopefully you can hear me. Good evening, everybody. Welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us today. It really is very much appreciated indeed. I hope now that there's been a few weeks of studying at the college, that your son and daughter have settled into life at WQE. What I want to do very, very briefly is introduce you today to some of the work that we do around the first term, centered around developing a growth mindset. Essentially, it's about building positive attitudes to learning. And what we try to do is work from an evidence base and work with students to help them think about what might come before it actually happens. So in short, it's about getting students to be prepared for the ebb and flow of planned and unplanned work that happens during an academic year. So we've already talked about the transition from school to college. In fact, Paul Wilson's talked about that in some detail now and how that can impact on the young person. And in most people, people value change and adapt really quite well. And our students, are, they're not immune to that. Lots of our students like the semi-independence of college, the facilities, but probably the most important thing that they value really is the ability to narrow down the courses, giving them the ability to study courses that they are passionate about, and courses that line up with their career aspirations. And that's a key change for them, and a really positive one at that. What I want to do now is just spend a few minutes highlighting the emotional change a student is likely to experience over the academic year. No doubt some of the students have already experienced some of these change, and I'll talk to you in a little bit more detail about what that means. One of the things that we ask students to do this academic term is to sketch themselves a graph of how they think their emotional highs and lows will go as they go through a typical year. And we suggest to them that it might go something like this. What we've got here is something called the change curve, and essentially it highlights a typical response to change. Now, initially, you can see from the left-hand part of the graph that there is a shock, that there's a shock to the system, which is very, very common indeed, especially in the first few weeks of an academic calendar. Waking up early, traveling by train or bus, getting homework done on time, the demands of an A-level program or a level 2 program, simply having more work to do independently. And Mr. Wilson talked about that extensively. The idea of young people really going from fairly dependent learning to independent learning. That doesn't happen overnight. That happens over a period of time. But that's all part of this emotional change. The idea that they're not spoon-fed, the list goes on. But as you can see from this graph, this is short term, and most students do move on to another state fairly quickly and move on to simply getting on with that change. And what the change curve does show us, that it's not likely to be all plain sailing. As you can see, there will be emotional highs and lows. And often, we call that the trough of despair, the bit about the emotional fog at the bottom. Students may be questioning why they are a student. We just need to be aware of that. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. And let's have a look at some of the indicators that we might need to be familiar with. Now, rejection, that's a really a kind of common emotion. We often get students that very early in stages who are not willing to take any advice at all. They know everything that there is to know about the world, indeed, their lives at home. They don't require any help from anybody. They reject all advice given to them by their teachers or their personal progress mentors. And I'm sure all the hundreds of people that are listening to me talk about this are probably nodding vigorously to say it's not just college, it happens at home too. And this is totally accepted and very normal part of that change curve. The next stage is denial. This is when students maybe who don't reject but deny everything. They deny the fact that they might be struggling and they might need some extra help. And for them, everything is absolutely fine. They want to be left alone. And I know some of you will be smiling and nodding because you recognize this. And again, that's very much part of this emotional change. Now, some students really highlight this through anger. Some students get very cross with everything that the college does sometimes. The staff, the courses, it's all wrong. We hate all of it. And this can be really quite tricky, but staff are really prepared for this. We know, we're well trained, we recognize this emotion, and it's very much an accepted part of that change. And as we've demonstrated in the previous graph, this is really quite short term, and we hope that we can overcome that fairly quickly. There are lots of students that tend to blame themselves. And again, it's a very typical response. I can't do this. I'm not clever enough. And, we see this quite a lot. And our response is that, we wouldn't be placing them on this particular course if we didn't think that they could undertake their course at this level. We go through a fairly rigorous information advice guidance program when students are first signed up to various courses. And if we didn't think they were up to it, we wouldn't be signing them up for that. So this is really quite a normal reaction. As I said, we are here to help and support these students. Our job is to reassure them and to make sure that we help them through this change. Lots of our students feel really quite anxious. Again, very much a reaction that we're very familiar with, and it's a typical reaction. And I would argue that it's very much an acceptable, response to an emotional change. Feeling anxious is not the same as having anxiety, and often people use these phrases interdependently, and we make a very clear distinction that actually feeling anxious is very much part of that change quotient, if you like. For example, feeling anxious just before a test or an exam is absolutely an accepted part of that change. However, when feeling anxiousness changes your routine or your sleep patterns, that's different, and that perhaps needs more tailored support. And again, we've got a range of support through the personal progress mentors. We've also got the welfare and skills department that can help young people overcome some of these challenges. Right at the bottom of that graph that I shared with you was really this emotional fog, giving up on college or courses. Again, these are emotions that are absolutely common, and we do our very best to work with the students and yourselves to make sure that we support them through this. And in the end, folks, this is about acceptance and just getting on with it. And I think it's really important that we highlight that in the vast majority of cases, people do absolutely get on with it. So next slide, please. So linked to this change curve that I've just talked to is really the concept of refocused thinking. It's about understanding how your son and daughter think. Some of you may be smiling or laughing, thinking, I will never, ever be able to understand how my son and daughter think. Absolutely, I understand that totally. And what we've got here is really some of the emotions that students often have. The idea that everyone else is better than me. How would you as a parent want to work with that emotion, or how would you might want to respond? Well, the first thing is it's really unlikely that everyone's better than them. The question that I'd be asking as a parent would be, well, what makes you think you feel like that? What 3 things can you improve on? Think about the next piece of work. What might you have done differently? I'm really rubbish at this. I can't do this. Well, you're not good at it yet, but what steps can we take collectively to improve this? Who can you talk to find out a bit more about this? They're the kind of responses that we might want to take. No one's doing 5 hours of independent study. Mr. Wilson talked about this. In some cases, it's more than 5 hours of independent study, and typical response would be, well, no one does that. Well, they may not be able to name any names, but if you talk to some second-year students, they would certainly be recommending this. And there is a clear and an inextricable link between students who have undertaken at least 5 hours of independent study and their eventual outcome. There's a clear link. So that's something that we ought to be reinforcing to our young people all the time. I'll revise near the exams, Mum, Dad. I had no problem with doing that when I was doing my GCSEs, and look how well I did in my GCSEs. I revised a week before. Now, that might have been the case at GCSE level, but you certainly wouldn't be able to get through that level 3 doing A levels or vocational courses. People need to make sure that they revise well in time and make sure they're reading their notes. What they ought to be doing really is to be revising from week 1 and making sure that they're going over their material very regularly. No one told me there was homework. Well, you need to be. My response would be, you need to be organized. You need to make sure that you've got a calendar on your phone, and we'll talk about that in a little detail. Making sure that they are well organized beforehand. Anyway, I'm not going to go through everyone, because I think by the end of this, you've probably got the picture in terms of how young people might get unstuck, and perhaps some of the responses that you might find useful. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to be handing over to Howard Patel, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the role of the parent. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. One of the things that we speak to our students about throughout their time with us is the idea of a growth mindset and not to be stuck where they are. One of the things that Paul Wilson's mentioned as well is about how it's a big transition from school to college, and we don't want them to think that everything is now a done deal. It's already been predetermined, but they've now got the opportunity to have a real impact on what happens to them, and that it's now up to them to see how they can change, grow, and develop as young people. And often a lot of that can be done by starting with themselves. And they need to be able to achieve that and really develop that mindset that whatever they put their mind to, they're able to achieve. And we continuously remind them of that, and we give them tips and strategies on how they can develop that growth mindset and move away from having a fixed mindset and that idea of failure and not being able to achieve things. We do that in a community and in partnership with them, and we do that not only through our sort of personal progress mentor sessions, but also throughout the curriculum as well. We talk to students about some of the things that they can change and some of the things that they can't. And again, we do this quite early on, and we run through some of these different situations with them and focus on factors they can influence and how this will have an impact on the grade that they'll achieve. So some of the things that we say that they can't change, and these have already been taken into account when they decided which college that they were going to come to, is the distance of the commute to college. And again, we have support via our bursary system that can help them with things like travel passes. If they've got any medical issues, any additional responsibilities at home, again, we've got specialist support teams that can help them and support them during their time with us as well. Factors that can be influenced are the number of hours that they're studying outside of lessons. And again, I'll come to that in a bit more detail. Their organization skills and how, again, they start that very early on, making sure that they have a good diet, they've got a good routine, and that they're focusing on their well-being, because that will have a direct impact on their ability to study and their output as well, and the grades that they're able to achieve. We have something called minimum expected grades that we calculate and that we then assign to all of our students. And like Donna mentioned earlier, you will soon be able to see that either via the Student Pro portal and then later via the Parent Pro portal as well. What we do is we take on average students that have GCSE grades and what they'll get, what they achieved for that particular subject, and then we add half a grade to that and we set what we call an aspirational target. We discuss this with the students about the grades that they're aiming for, and then regularly throughout the year, we have something called progress points, where we collect grades from each of the subjects that they're studying, and then we have a conversation and a discussion with the student of whether or not they are on track to get the grade that we had assigned to them by the end of the course. And if for any reason they are not on track, we look at additional support mechanisms that we can put in place to help them to achieve that. We have those conversations regularly with them via the teaching staff, but also via their personal progress mentors as well. What they will do is the personal progress mentor will have a regular one-to-one meeting with the student. They discuss the minimum expected grades, look at the support they can access. They discuss their current studying and revision habits and schedules, how things are going in general, and how they can make changes and improvements that, again, that are tailored to the student's individual circumstances, needs, and ways of learning. One of the things that we say to our students is, we always ask our students that, what do you think is a reasonable amount of time to study out of your lessons? And you would have seen your child's timetables, and we have study blocks in between. And we strongly advise all of our students to use that time effectively and to use all of the resources and facilities that we have on our campuses. And that's whether the library, the learning resource centres, the study centres. And we want them to be able to create a time management plan so that they are allocating enough time outside of those lessons to be able to do that additional work. We say to them that the currency that they have is their time. And genuinely, the more time they put in, the more payment they make at that time, and the greater the rewards and the outcome for them. We'd be expecting students to do 4 to 5 hours of study per subject outside of class. And that's kind of a benchmark that we tell our students from the very start. Some of that will be homework set by subject teachers. It will be reviewing work that's already been covered, but also taking the lead, reading ahead, doing additional research as well, and looking at what's coming up next so they feel better prepared going into those lessons. Overall, we expect students on a 3A level or a full-time program to be studying 15 hours additional outside of their timetable lessons. And again, that's something that we are routinely reminding our students about so that they can develop these habits early on. I'm just going to hand over to my colleague, David Morgan.
Hey, good evening and a warm welcome from me. One of the things about the transition from school to college is really kind of developing some really strong organizational skills to manage, the workload that my colleagues have already been talking about across, 3 subjects or, of course, like an extended diploma. So what we really encourage our students to do is use technology to their advantage, and that includes their mobile phones. So at the moment, as I'm sure many of you are aware, lots of schools, academy chains are in the process of or have already banned mobile phones, and we're certainly not in the wanting to do that, because actually these are young people post 16 and we're encouraging that independence and using mobile technology and students' own devices in a kind of sophisticated manner, hopefully. So what we sort of encourage and what we'll be supporting students with through the subject areas and also the pastoral system, the personal progress mentor sessions, is using apps to support their learning. And that could be anything from using something like Google Drive to Evernote to OneNote. There are a range of apps out there that we know that our students use and are successful in terms of that organization of their note taking and their work. And using mobile technology, they can use voice notes to record key learning, and again really helps students to organize that, and also photographing key documents, their notes again. And this is particularly helpful for students who sometimes can be quite disorganized, and perhaps their filing system in many ways is their bag. And I have a son in the second year at a college, not this one, and a lot of his notes are just strewn in his bag, and we're, as a parent, I'm supporting him to actually take photos of those bits of notes, bring them together, and that is proving quite successful. Of course, we've got to recognize that students do use paper filing or paper notes, and many of our students will have bought notepads and will be going to their lessons and be making notes. And again, what we encourage there is students regularly and planning in time to organize that note taking, because of course during the course of a day they will attend maybe 3 A-level subjects and be making notes, and there is a potential that they might get somewhat disorganized. So there's a lot of work we're trying to do with students to encourage that, get home, separate those notes, put them into your filing system, and using those very, in many ways, old-fashioned ways of storing those notes. So having files for subjects, for whole courses, individual units and modules, depending obviously on the subject. At college, we also use Microsoft Outlook, and that really helps with students keeping up to date with deadlines, set the work that's been set. We're obviously using Teams, and we also talk about students having notifications that ping to their phones. So again, using the technology that they have. So so that's all there is to really to say in terms of organisation, and that's something we encourage, our young people to do, and we'll be revisiting that in again some of the PPM sessions that are coming up. So the next bit that I want to talk about is progression, because as Paul Wilson talked about earlier, the time that they spend, or young people spend with us, is relatively short. And one of the things to kind of acknowledge here really is that we have students who join us with very fixed ideas about what they want to do in the future, and have concrete plans. But of course, many don't. They've chosen their subjects, but when we ask them, well, what do you want to do in the future, they're not so sure. And there is, a lot of time, despite the short period of time, to really start to sort of develop that. And we do that really from the beginning. And again, through the personal progress mentor sessions, and the one-to-ones they do, and they are already underway with their PPMs, we ask them a series of questions about their areas of interest, what are the things they enjoy, the subjects they enjoy, and traditionally, and also perhaps the new subjects that they've started, and we encourage them to be open-minded and look at a range of possibilities, that which we're going to move on to in a moment, and that obviously includes university and the vast range of courses at university, and obviously the growing number of apprenticeships, higher apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, and we're very kind of focused on good quality employment ultimately for the students that come to us. One of the key things to sort of highlight here is that moving on to college, there is really good progression to the next level at WQE. So moving from year 1 to year 2, and then another area of progression is higher education. So just to put it into context, last year we sent, so the year just gone, we sent 1,300 university applications, plus a further 120 former students who applied via the college. And it's important to say that we lots of students do take a gap year to figure out what they want to go and do, but during that gap year they apply via the college, and we will support applications. We will look at, again, personal statements, and we send, we approve the application to universities despite the student or no longer being a student with us. We do a lot of focus on apprenticeships and higher degrees, higher degree apprenticeships, and again, we explore these in the PPM sessions right from the start, and again, explore a range of opportunities, including, again, taking gap years and supporting the students to really plan those gap years if that's what their decision is. It's not just right, off you go, there's your gap year. We look at a range of things that we can do to support them, whether it's looking for employment, how they might utilize their time through voluntary work, if they need to do certain sorts of voluntary work for perhaps what they want to do at university, if that's where they're heading. It's really important to touch on the specific support for progression that we have. So I want to touch on something called the Sutton 30 enrichment, and this is an enrichment that we run for what we would regard as high achievers, and the Sutton 30 are the essentially the top 30 universities in the country as regarded by the Sutton Trust organisation, includes many Russell Group, including Oxford and Cambridge, but also some others like the University of Lancaster, for example. So the Sutton 30 enrichment is geared towards supporting students who want to apply to very highly competitive courses, and that runs from January, and year 1 students have an opportunity to apply for that later this term. As one would expect, there are visits to universities, including Oxford and Cambridge. Again, linking to the Sutton Trust organisation, we encourage students to apply for the Sutton Trust summer programme, which is a really fantastic residential program that students can access. And there are eligibility criteria, but many of our students do manage to gain access to it, and there's a range of universities they can choose from, and they spend a week during the summer holiday seeing what university is like. So Durham are involved, Nottingham, etc. Again, we have a range of careers opportunities. So we have a careers fair in March, and a range of employers and apprenticeship providers are invited to that. So our year one students and indeed year two students can access that. We also have a university fair in March, and Paul Wilson has already referred to that. We have between 70 and 80 universities who come to us, and they set up their stalls, and students go and speak to them. And it's a really fantastic opportunity for them to see the range of universities out there, the range of courses that are out there. Also in the spring term, we have PPM sessions that focus on careers, and we have a specific careers module that we've put together that cover everything that the students would expect. So university applications, apprenticeships, employment, writing CVs, that sort of thing. And then in the summer term, that's when, again, as I mentioned, last year we sent 1,300 or so applications off to university or to UCAS. So we start that UCAS process in the summer term, giving all the students everything they need to be able to apply successfully. And we get them registering with UCAS Hub as soon as it goes live, really in May, June time. And that then links in with the sort of final big event of the year, and that's the WQE FutureWise event. And it's just a fantastic day. So the students essentially off timetable that day, and they go to a range of talks. They sign up to talks from employers, again, universities, and we have university lecturers, academics coming in from universities to give talks that might be specific to something like physics, mathematics, criminology, etc. So as well as more generic sessions on writing a really good personal statement. So that's something that our students really enjoy. They get a huge amount out of. So that's a kind of summary really of all the kind of specific support that we put in place for our young people and their progression beyond WQE.
Thank you very much, David. So our final slide gives you direction to speak to us directly via a QR code should you wish to. Also, my colleagues and I will stay around for a little while and answer any questions that come up in the chat. And should you wish to engage in our open day, that is on the 2nd of November, and you'll very shortly be able to come and have a look and ask some further questions should you wish to, because I know that some of you have contacted me and said you'd like to come and have a look now your child has started in a different regard, and lots of you have got more children in year 11. So a few questions that I know had come on my email prior to this event. So it's the 2nd of November for that. And should you wish to contact any one of us directly, you can do that through our reception and they will pass that through to us. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it's given you a flavour of what is to come, and please watch out for further parental events on our website and social media. Goodbye, everybody.